Hello, everyone, and welcome today to episode 77 of Celebrity Customer Experience Riffs with me, Jill Raff, where we riff on anything and everything employee experience to customer experience related, because I believe strongly that an employee experience will create that customer experience. And if you notice, I didn't say a great experience, because the point is it will influence the experience. It could be good or it could be bad. And so that's why it's so important to create that great employee experience so that you end up with a great customer experience. I want to start out today and thank everyone who's listening live. Thank you for joining us. And please comment along the way. We will be able to see your comments. I will add them to the screen so that we can address them and have a conversation and bring you in. And I want you to know that I really appreciate your time here. You could be doing anything else today, but we are going to have a great conversation. So thank you. And to actually maximize your time, write down notes, ask questions, make comments, share this with someone else who you know will appreciate it and learn from it. And if you're watching the replay, thank you. Do the same. Tag us, tag me or my guest, which I'm going to bring to you now soon. And then we will engage and get back with you. So my guest today, I'm super excited to bring in Mark Michelson. Mark, thank you for joining today.
My pleasure.
I'm really thrilled to have you here. So, Mark has been conducting CX research since the mid 1980s, helping to create products, stories, services, brands, merchandising systems, and websites. In addition to managing his research firms, he started several trade associations in the research industry, including Mystery Shopping Providers Association and Mobile Marketing Research Association. Mark is also the founder of the CX Forums, a series of summit conferences held annually across the US. And we will get to the details of that. Some exciting things going on there that Mark is leading the charge on. And he wants you to know that he is the person who helps people understand each other. And the coolest thing is that he's a musician as well. So we'll dive into some of that, learn more about Mark personally and all the great things that he's doing in CX. So, Mark, I love to just kind of start at the beginning so that people can know a little bit more about you and a little bit of your backstory, your journey, and really what was the defining moment that led you to your customer experience journey and prioritizing that in your work?
Gosh, as kids, my sister and I used to put on plays for the neighborhood, and these were like musicals and puppet shows and things like that. So we were kind of creating customer experiences in the garage and the basement. At 6, 7, 8 years old. Um, Growing up in a family of musician types, we were always had that kind of stuff going on. It was just natural to do. I guess as I got into later in my teenage years, my dad was in public television. Then he went into advertising, and the thing about advertising intrigued me, and I have decided to study it and get a degree. But the thing was, it's very much a one to many kind of communication, and it's a lot around media, and it's persuasive and all that good stuff. I prefer to have more of the customer and the employee input into things. And so it became sort of natural for me. I went to a couple focus groups as a kid, and I thought this is really cool. They're talking to people and seeing what they think and then delivering on those things.
Mm.
Well, I read a book I guess about that time, 17. I was living in Europe at the time, and it was called Think and Go Rich. It talked about having a mission, and I realized that I sort of had a talent or like a moth drawn to a flame more that I could help people understand each other. Just because I cared, I guess. I would listen to one party and listen to the other party and help them kind of understand each other or what they need and what they think about. So I actually wrote it down and said that's my mission, to help people understand each other, and it's been my mission ever since. It's a never ending mission. There's no conclusion. It's about the journey, and it's taken me to 70 countries. I've had operations in 22 at one point for about 15, 20 years. Had a company had a lot of employees, and so even trying to deal with them, help them understand each other was my own challenge internally. And it really starts with know thyself. And so I love your position as being caring and including the employee, because that's really part of the yourself of an organization, if you will.
Mm. Know thyself. That is so true, regardless of anything we're doing in life, right? Certainly
Yeah,
personally. And if we know who we are personally, we then can show up in a bigger way, a fuller way, a more productive way, and giving way to contribute to whatever company it is that we are a part of, whether you're an employee or if you're a leader, right? How you show up is influences those around you. Uh,
absolutely. We're all, the phrase "we're all in this together." I mean, it's kind of worn out these days, but no matter what organization or event or thing you're a part of, when you choose to work with others, be it in a church group, in a neighborhood group, and in a sporting thing, whatever it is, you got to have your heart in it. Why be
mhm.
there? You're not just taking up space.
Yeah,
And everyone has their own opinion and thought about what should be and what it is, at the same time. So really just taking a moment to understand what that is the challenge. And there are plenty of tools and techniques out there in the research world to do that.
hmm yeah, and I love what you said in the beginning. We were talking about gathering that information. So in your research, and there are many companies now that are really gathering the information of what the customer experience is. And I am working hard to try to find companies who are developing the employee side of that aspect,
Hmm.
because I believe that the first customer for an employee I'm sorry, for an employer, the first customer for the employer is really your employee. And I think we need to kind of shift our focus and our perspective on that. But I love what you said is that, you were gathering the information and then basically acting on it. And I just want to talk about that for one quick second, because I think that's one of our biggest problems. And let me know your thoughts on this, Mark. I feel like some companies are investing and they're like, feel like they're checking the box and saying, well, we're doing the research and we're finding out what our customers think. We're finding out. Maybe they are, in fact, finding out what their employees think. Not enough for doing that, but we're gathering this information. But then what? They don't act on it. Sometimes they're just like, okay, they're busy and they're putting out fires and they're working in their business, and that all that gathered data sometimes just gets pushed aside. Or they're like, okay, now I've got this data. What do I do with it? I had someone approach me recently and said, I'm working with this company and that's what they do, but they don't now have anyone to help them implement. Like, you would be a perfect person to partner with them because they're gathering the data and you can help them implement it. And it feels to me that this is happening a lot, that people are gathering data, if right, like, let's hope more do, but then what are they doing to act on it?
Yeah, I mean, closing the loop on stuff, and I want to take a step back slightly and talk about why are we doing research to begin with, and at what stage are we when we're doing the research.
Mm,
The kind of research that we do to design things, to create experiences, to create products, create environments, brands, communications is quite different from the research we do to measure the effectiveness of that after the experience.
mm,
Okay.
right.
So let's define that first of all, because most research that I do has a very specific objective or objectives. Okay. Clients that I work with need answers to very specific questions so they can make a decision or design around that thing. Right. And that's, usually driven by some sort of innovation initiative. All right. As it could even be a refresh of something like, we need to refresh our brand, or we need to refresh our stores, or, packaging, whatever it might be. But that kind of research up front is completely different. It has a timeline. It's ad hoc. It's done, and once it's done, it's usually like focus groups or ethnography, um, more
Mhm.
qualitative in nature. And you might run it out on quant just to validate that your decisions are going to have an effect. before you go spend a lot of money, millions of dollars, whatever it is, in actually creating the thing, right? So that's the front end research, the front end of design. That kind of stuff, it's used by the right people, the design team, the architects, the product design people, the people involved with training.
Mhm.
They need the inputs there to do the design. But once it's designed, that's when all the measurements on the back end that most CX people are familiar with, and that's customer experience, employee experience, SAT scores, all those
Right.
metrics that define how we're doing today.
Yeah. How is that rolled out? Right. That
Yeah.
first information that you talked about. How
And
is it
so
rolled out?
there are platforms that exist that have notifications set up if you have a series of bad marks on something. Let's say it's delivery of product, and you get a whole bunch of how do we, you're asking how do we do thumbs up, thumbs down. You get a bunch of thumbs down, all of a sudden you're going, what the heck? What's going on? So you can set that to notify the people who can do something about that,
Hmm.
whether it's shipping or packing or whatever it is. You can notify the directors or the people and say, hey, these are the comments coming down. What's going on? And then they're assigned a ticket to resolve it and have to respond. So that's kind of
Right.
a closed loop built in process
Hmm.
on the metrics that are gathered. I know that
Yeah.
mystery shopping, there'd be a lot of times in the past, it took a month or more to get your report. Now you get it like that, right? It's literally, you're in the store, you can talk to the shopper while they're shopping sometimes.
Yeah.
So, can you have an effect on something as you're observing it? Well, there's a lot around that in physics. If you want to get in a Heisenberg principle and stuff like that,
Yeah.
but you're dealing with people who are communicating through online media in general, right? Whether it's a survey form or an interview like this. Is there self-editing? Sure, but can you get to the truth of the matter, and can you act on it that impacts people in a good way?
Yeah. I think I view technology, first of all, it's an inherent part of what's happening in business today so
Mhm.
that we have that speed of transfer of information. But the speed of change is so rapid. It's like head spinning with technology today. And I think using that to your advantage as a company where you're really sending that direct information and that data back to people who can make a difference, who can make a change, who can implement it. That's what's really key because it's like gathering that data. It's not just doing this major study, but it's using tools, technology that's help you create. For me, I feel like it helps you create more time and space for that human connection. And
Yep.
no technology can replace that interaction between two people. And it's transforming, I call it transforming transactions into interactions. It's the title of my book, my part of my book that's a collaborative book with other NSA authors here in Austin. But it's using technology for that quick rote, either rote experiences or tasks that need to be done, or using it for information delivery so that then the human being can then make a difference. So it will impact the experience. I just want to stop for a second and recognize a few people here with us.
Mhm.
Darej Naim says crisis everywhere. Yes, there is. And that's why we need to address what's going on and face it square on. Interesting conversation. Thank you. I'm glad. Thank you so much for joining us. And my buddy Robbie, thanks for joining today. He says, yes, be authentic and bring your heart to all that you do. And I think that's a good point, Robbie. I mean, I think people feel whether we're authentic or not. They feel whether we're being kind of computerized and we're just spitting out kind of, scripts or information that the boss has told them to say, right? I think that human authentic connection is what's really important today in the market. So Mark, let's just shift this a little bit.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, using your skills and your experience and creating, let's talk for a minute about your CX forums in particular.
Mhm.
And actually, while I'm doing that, I'm going to put up the website here for everyone to go to see. It's www.cxforums.org. So tell us a little bit about that, because that's a way for you to extend and continue your research, so to speak. But also, I called this session "Let's Talk CX" because it's a way for you to keep the conversation going. And if we don't have that conversation happening, of course, it will never be implemented, right? It's bringing it to the forefront. So, and I'm excited about the summit that you're going to be doing here in Austin next year. But tell us a little bit about um, what a two part, and we'll break that up a little bit. But let's start with one: what you hoped to create in having these forums, and why you're doing them across the country.
Mhm.
And then we'll get to some things, maybe some tips that you've learned that people will help people implement.
Sure. Well, it started out as a CXPA CX Day event. That was in 2016 or so, and I've been involved with CXPA on a local basis, since the founding. And so it's always a challenge. What are you going to do this year for CX Day? And I thought, well, let's do like a TED Talks. Let's get 10 speakers, give them 10 minutes each, 5 the first hour, take a break, 5 another hour. Save Q&A for later, and it attracted a lot of people. We had like 130 or 140 people attend this meeting, and during the meeting, several people came up and said, "Hey, what if we got others involved in this? Other associations, for instance, would this format be something interesting to have for other people? A longer event?" And so we invited. There was 18 something associations that helped co-create it. And at the time, this was for 2017, we put in place individual rooms for each association to have their own like breakout sessions, if you will. It's a 1-day meeting, but someone had to step up to the plate and say, okay, there's food involved, there's a venue involved, there's cameras involved, there's an app involved, there's all these expenses. Who's going to pay and how much? So I happen to have an extra company or two that dealt with association management. And so I said, well, let me run it under that. Now, the main purpose and goal became through those co creation. How can we bring together people for 1 day in a local market who may not even know each other to share what they know and have experienced in customer experience from their own discipline and industry? And we want to cross pollinate those industries and disciplines. So a researcher can meet someone in a call center. A call center can know what's happening with people in culture on the front line from training. Architects can meet people who are dealing with HR, for instance, or even they can meet researchers. Because when you're designing something, when you shape that thing, whatever it is, online or in brick and mortar, it shapes you. So there's an old quote, we build our houses, then they build us. Or your framework is set by the facility and by the product and the packaging. That's your purpose, if you will, and how you treat people. IKEA shopping is a whole
Mhm.
lot different than, shopping at a convenience store. They're just built
Yeah.
differently. So, being authentic through that process is key. Now, as far as CX forums and local market, we did Atlanta, and I thought, well, this is cool. I wonder if they have the same challenges in other markets, and they do, because people don't get the opportunity to meet together. CXP is a wonderful organization, but they rely on volunteers largely to design and create those in the events locally. And that's a good thing. They can have informal meetings all the time. I think it's important to share and learn. And a big fan of small groups in particular. I belong to one that we started. A friend of, now a friend, Jerry Seifert, started a small group within CXPA. And there's like 5 or 6 of us that meet every week, and we love it. Just talking about things that are whatever's on our mind. It's a very personal kind of thing. And I thought, can we do that in a 1-day meeting, maybe by limiting the number of people? So I only have 150 people in this thing, and I do it in a music venue. Being a musician, I perform in some of these places, but having a stage already set up with all the AV and good food, and it happens to be a winery too. I mean, come on. So now you're talking adding fun in with the learning. and making it a cool experience to do it. And we do a lot of them at city winery locations, New York,
Mhm.
Boston, Chicago, Atlanta, Nashville. Austin's the only one that doesn't have a city winery, so we're doing it there at the
Yeah, but I tipped you off on where to do it
yeah,
here.
yeah, that's wonderful because
Yeah.
the thing is, I mean, it's been difficult, obviously, during the whole pandemic to do anything in person, and even venues are having a hard time managing that
Yeah.
whole thing because they're ultimately they have the responsibility for safety
Yeah.
measures. So, I've been talking with Hart over there at the One World Theater, and he's a good fellow, but I have to get a date pinned down. And when you do that, that means you're putting money on the table,
Yeah.
and it's a business. So
Yeah.
I hope to get people to come, and I hope that they enjoy it. And planning it, it's like planning a party, planning a thing for your friends. You want to make sure everyone's taken care of and everyone is appreciated and comfortable.
Yeah,
I think.
you're creating that experience, right? It's
Yeah,
walking the
yeah.
walk, and so what I hear to kind of summarize all this is creating an environment and an experience where everyone who come who prioritizes their people, who is focused on CX, can appreciate how to grow and learn from others. And I love that you said you use a term that I use as well about cross pollination
Mhm.
because I come from multiple backgrounds. I've had multiple careers. I call it different lives throughout my life, and so one of the I think the unique value add, just as you're saying what your summit does, it's a value add that people are coming from all different industries and different experiences. They get to share with one another and learn because they're thinking differently. Where I bring my background, which is quite diverse across countries, languages, cultures, and I'm able to look at what's going on in a company and the challenges that are happening, regardless of what you're selling, what service or product, and actually cross pollinate ideas, strategies that I've learned in one industry across another. Because at the
Oh
end of the
yeah.
day, business is business, right? When you have employees, you have customers. That's what matters. The principles still remain the same.
It's
Um,
funny you mentioned that because even during the pandemic, I've had companies come to me and say, we want to focus on our B2B national account customers. And yet they're dealing with everything in an online environment. I'm like, these people are also B2C. And so they're like trying to get to a B2C kind of relationship with people who are more of a national account. Now, this happens to be a clothing manufacturer, but they're
mhm.
realizing people are people. You know, So,
Yeah,
we
that's
may
it.
wear different roles or we may play different things at different times of the day. I know in one day I'm probably 10 different people. Not that I'm schizo. Yes, yeah, no, no. But
Yeah, well,
everyone's that way.
yeah, every experience is different. Yeah, so, one of my sayings, I've got many of them, but is that people are people first and their customers second. And
Yeah.
I think when companies recognize that they address everyone that touches their business, whether it's the supplier, whether it's your employer, regardless, other stakeholders, whether it's your employees, regardless of where they are in the task level and the hierarchy of title. Everyone's the same, and we all want the same things, right? We all
Mhm.
want to have that commitment. We all want to feel pride. We all want to be heard and recognized and contribute, feel like we belong, that we're working towards something bigger and better. And um, I think that's really true. And another thing, I just want to mention that I love when you talked about how the different people that we touch, right? Like it influences what we do and brings out the different parts of us and our personalities. And for a short number of years, I developed a business with my sister and a couple of friends called the Friendship Stone. And I happen to keep a couple
Ah,
on my
nice.
desk. And they are tiger's eye stones that come from Africa. They're hand tumbled. And one of the messages, there are multiple messages, which we won't go into necessarily on the friendship stone, but the big one that touches on what you said is that every stone is unique and has its own shape. Like here's another. There's not two alike, just like we
Mhm.
as human beings in this world. And that each stone, as it's being tumbled, takes on its own shape, its own personality, and its own, as you turn it, it's something different and unique based on the other stones that it's touched in the tumbling process. And
Mhm.
in the same way, we as human beings, we really become who we are based on others that we interact with, people that we meet, people who influence in life, people who we influence, people who we interact with. And so I love the idea of your summits because you're providing that beautiful forum for people to come together from all different backgrounds and really learn from each other, which is really great. So we've just got a few minutes left. I want to
I saw Mike had a couple comments, and Patty,
yeah.
sure,
What's that?
Patty and
Oh, some
Mike
more.
had a
Okay,
couple
let me. Oh,
comments. And
here we go. Yes. So
Patty's part
thank
of my
you.
small group.
Yeah, Patty.
It's her
Patty.
birthday too. Happy birthday, Patty.
Oh, happy birthday, Patty. Awesome. The small group is invaluable, she's saying. Yeah, thank you. I think it's right. I think when you have a more intimate environment, you really can stop and talk, get to know someone, really engage with them. Mike Wittenstein, thanks, Mike, for joining and commenting here, joining the conversation. Love the idea of keeping it small by design. When I work a room. Let's see. When he works a room, I prefer meeting a few people and spending quality time with them rather than just saying hi to dozens and dozens more. I am so with you, Mike. Like just, oh, hi, how are you? The same conversation that means nothing, right? It's almost like I see it as the transaction that happens. It's completely unemotional. It's rote. There's no real connection versus a smaller environment where you really create those connections with people. You really speak to people and you can share with them and you can learn with them as well. And Patty said, thank you. Thank you, Mark. Yeah,
It's
thank y'all so
interesting.
much for joining.
When you go to conferences a lot, and I'm sure most people here have been to plenty, or probably even spoken at many. There's a lot of action that happens on the stage, off the stage, in exhibit areas, and things like that. And personally, I just always got a lot more just hanging out with people, be it at a bar, a restaurant, or in the lobby or whatever, right? That's where you go and you have your meetings with someone you want to talk to, right?
Yeah, you always take it outside,
Yeah,
right?
so little cubby holes are kind of important, to have, just a place to go to, you feel like, hey, let's go have a chat for a minute, and
Mm-hmm.
you're good to do that without a lot of interruptions. So we look for that in designing these programs. It's a lot of fun. If you like throwing parties or you like throwing events, it's a lot of fun. But it is a whole industry and it's a business and discipline. It
It
requires a
is.
whole different set of mind than doing, say, research studies.
Yeah, no, it is its own thing. It's a full-on event and it's
Yeah.
really utilizing someone who has those creating an event skills and experience to then create the environment for which to foster those connections to happen and to learn. So
Yeah. And as much
yeah,
natural and fun as you can, just be yourself and tell your story and go out and mingle.
yeah. So it's clear the pandemic has obviously affect, especially any sort of live events, summits,
Mhm.
and things like that. What would you say in your mind is maybe one takeaway from what you've learned through these summits and different people that you've met through the CX Connect podcast platform that you host, where you feel that you could share with someone right now of maybe something that they could use to implement in their business? I always want to try to help the listeners find a takeaway, find something from each guest that they feel like they can learn from them and maybe apply in their business, especially with the way things have been changing so much with the pandemic,
I
or
think
or,
it's
or even unpandemic related. What
Yeah,
what
well,
would be the top?
I think the whole thing is created a real a new playing field for everyone. The biggest brands to the guy like me sitting at home. We all have the same ability and tools to do whatever we want with each other,
Mm,
and so it's sort of leveled the playing field, right? Number one, being creative with tools is a whole different issue. We all have Zoom. We can all have StreamYard. All these things are there. But what's your intent? What's your purpose? Why are you doing things? There's so many talking heads out there now that just
mm,
it was a one to many, and they're just talking and talking, talking.
yeah.
And you're like, I'm tired of hearing that. Engagement is key, I think. Um, when I was looking at all the platforms, just like I would with all the different research tools out there, A couple of quotes for you. First of all, when you're manufacturing hammers, the whole world's a nail. You've heard that. And so many people out there are just pushing the nails of yesteryear instead of looking
Mhm.
ahead to how can I do other things. The second thing I encountered, and this is my own quote, but coming up with all these platforms, I thought I have to have a platform to do what I want to do. If I want to host things or whatever online. What's the best platform? Looked at all of them, had to create events on each one to really understand them. End of the day, I hate that line, but what I figured out was I could use Zoom, and it doesn't matter what tool I use, it's how I use it, just like a pencil. I can have a pencil, a great pencil, best pencil ever. Is it going to make me a better writer? No. Is it going to help me draw better? No. But I have a pencil. We all have that pencil. We don't all know how to draw or write. And so focus on your skills and what do you want to do with this pencil? You could use it
Mhm.
to poke a hole if you wanted. We all have the same tool.
Right. How do we use the tools that we have
Correct.
so that we're really utilizing them intentionally, purposefully, in a way that's not just creating more noise out there?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think with technology, it depends upon your end goal. Some tools have other ways of reaching more platforms or other special things. And I think what you said, which I want to highlight, because I think it might have just gone under the radar there, is that you actually had an event or you had a webinar or call, whatever it was, you created an event on each platform so that you could learn and utilize what it was to see what fit. And I
Yeah.
think that's key is there's a lot of technology. There are a lot of ways to do things. There's no one right way specifically. And I think when people get caught into this is the way we've always thought, this is the way it is, that's when you're going down a rabbit hole because there are many ways to do things. And when we keep our minds open and the innovation, um, creative process going, then that's where we're going to grow. And then you figure out what works best for you and your goals, where, something else might work best for someone else and their goals.
Think of
Uh,
shoes. Think of shoes.
yeah.
You're going to wear one pair of shoes the rest of your life?
Yeah.
No, I've got shoes for running. I got shoes for, swimming. You're right. This is shoes for dancing.
There you go. I love that one.
There's still
Yeah.
shoes.
But what's the end goal? And Patty's adding in here for people to stop pushing the nails. What do you foresee in the future so that they can start getting ahead of the curve instead of chasing it? Thanks
Innovation.
for that question,
Innovation
Patty.
is such a thing. When you look at innovation, I mean, you find your passion first of all. If you have a passion around something, that's key. And I used to give talks on entrepreneurship a lot, right? So everything around you was created by someone as a business. Everything around you. It doesn't matter if it's the coffee cup or the business card or a smartphone or a pair of glasses or whatever. Someone created a business around that thing. And so if you think about that, whether you're creating a thing or a service or whatever it is, first of all, you have to have a passion for it. It has to meet a need of some kind. Second is innovating around that and saying, I can do it better. Or, this is something I like. Maybe others like it. So design from your inner voice and don't be afraid to take that leap to help someone else.
Yes, help someone else. I love it. It's Zig Ziglar, right? When you help someone get what they want, you will automatically. I'm paraphrasing. You will get what you want, and
I'm seeing the
thanks.
Stones tonight. You can't always get what you want, but you get what you need.
Hopefully, that would be good. And as long as you recognize that is what I really needed, right? Yeah.
The universe will
Mark,
deliver. It's weird.
what?
The universe delivers.
The universe delivers. Absolutely. Putting it out there. Wow. Well, that's a great way to wrap up, actually. I love that those words of advice and wisdom at the end. The universe does deliver, and we need to put out to the universe those good, positive vibes, energies, thoughts, actions. It doesn't just happen from sitting and thinking about it, it's acting
Sure.
on it. Mark, I've really enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure others have as well. And thank you for being with us today and look forward to continuing the conversation with you also offline. Uh, about summits, about your podcast, and just ways to continue to collaborate, because I do think we're very much aligned in our work together. And I did want to, I have up on the screen, if y'all have noticed, a way to reach out to Mark, to connect with him as well. Connection is the key word here, with Mark and on LinkedIn. So it's basically his last name, Michelson. So at LinkedIn, you can find him. Just look under Michelson and you'll find that. And one last time, CX Forums, plural, cxforums.org is the way to reach Mark. Any other closing words, Mark?
Looking forward to Austin and coming down there in the fall. So we're planning Austin right now. I think it's in November. That looks like it's going to be the date. So
Okay.
if anyone is interested in participating in any of our local events, we do look for local people, and we look for people who want to share a real story. It's a relevant and current story. We're looking for speakers all the time. You can reach me directly. I'll point you towards our website. Our website has a thing at the top that says "Be a Speaker." Fill that out. Send it in. Let's see what we can do to get you on stage. Tell your story. It's a 15-minute talk. It's not that hard. It's just having something meaningful to say that'll help someone else.
I love it. So true. So true. Great. Well, thank you, Mark. Thanks again for joining today. Appreciate all that you've had to contribute. And I look forward to keeping the conversation going with you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. So, thank y'all for joining. Thank you for all those who contributed to the conversation with Mark and myself, and look forward to joining again. Join us next year. Join us every week. I was going to say throughout the year. We are meeting every Thursday. Every now and then there'll be a conflict, a holiday, or something coming up in 2 weeks, for example, Thanksgiving. We'll reschedule that one. But for the most part, we are here live on Thursdays, 12 o'clock Central. If you have a topic specifically around EX or CX that you want to discuss, if you have a guest you want to hear from, reach out to me directly. And there's my information on the screen, Jill@jillraff.com, or through my website, my name, jillraff.com. And let me know what you want to know more about. My goal and objective in starting this was to highlight ways for people to learn from others who are making it through this pandemic. It started out through the pandemic, but right now it's evolved to much more, with just creating a better business by prioritizing your people. So thanks again for joining today, and I look forward to seeing you next week. I'm going to take that banner off, Jill@jillraff.com. So thanks for joining, and until then, to creating great experiences.